Hello, Legal Helm listeners. Today, I am delighted to be speaking with Jim Andrews, President and co-founder of Precedent. Jim has over a decade of experience in the insurance industry and previously co-founded Carpe Data, a company that provides insurance firms with the next generation data solutions. Before this, he held several senior roles at companies like ChoicePoint and LexisNexis. His extensive experience across various organizations has equipped him with a unique perspective on the opportunities for innovation and improvement in the legal and insurance sectors. On today's podcast, I'll be speaking with Jim about how firms can leverage AI to streamline communication and documentation review processes between attorneys and insurance carriers. Jim, hello and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bim. It's great to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a few weeks now.
Good. We're glad to have you here. So as I mentioned in the intro, your background and experience connects the dots between the business of law and insurance. We'd love to hear a little bit about your journey that led you to co-found Precedent.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, I spent actually close to 20 years selling technology to property and casualty insurance carriers. So those are going to be everybody's favorite commercials, every sporting event. So the State Farms and Geico's and Allstates and Progressives of the world, and many others. And I kind of got into that industry by accident, which a lot of people, the joke in insurance is either somebody that you know or are related to worked in the industry, or it was an accident. It's not a lot of people growing up saying, "Hey, I want to be in the insurance industry when I'm an adult." And so in those roles, I actually spent quite a bit of time with the claims folks at insurance carriers. And so got to really understand that side of sort of the equation that Precedent is involved in, got to know a lot of those people and understand some of the issues that they struggle with. But excitingly for me, my middle brother, I'm the youngest of three boys, is a plaintiff's attorney in Seattle and was able to also, my brothers and I are all very close. My brother's a great guy, and understand, what he was doing and his perspective on, advocating for folks that are injured and helping them through that process, and really appreciating that there's two sides to every story. And there's, kind of most importantly, an opportunity to improve the way that plaintiff firms and insurance carriers work together to ultimately get to a speedier, better outcome for that injured party.
Fantastic. And I love the brotherly connection. I can relate to that because my brother is also in the technology industry, not in legal, but he's in the finance arena. So often we will be bouncing ideas off each other in terms of how do you do things in finance and how do I do things in legal. So it's great to see that level of connection.
I think it's been more one-sided with my brother giving me a lot of information, educating me. And my father's also an attorney. My mom's a paralegal. So uh, fortunate to have people that I can rely on to ask questions to and continue to learn.
Yes, indeed. I'd love to learn a little bit more about Precedent. So from what I've read, Precedent is kind of at the forefront of using AI to streamline some of those legal processes. So perhaps you could just elaborate on how Precedent's first leveraging AI technology, like I think that's the kind of interesting part of it. But how is it transforming the way law firms and insurance carriers handle such cases?
Absolutely. At the highest level, I'm going to answer your second question first. Is Precedent is a neutral third party that sits between a extraordinarily fragmented plaintiff's firm side of the market where there's tens of thousands or potentially hundreds of thousands of attorneys, tens of thousands of firms that all have different ways of doing things. And on the other side, you have insurance carriers where there's at least a few hundred, if not more, that have different ways of doing things. And so there's been no standardization in the way that those two parties interact. And maybe 30 years ago, when less than 1 in 10 people that got into an accident would get an attorney, that was okay. But now it's 50 or 60 or sometimes 70% of the folks that are involved in an accident get an attorney, but they're still interacting as if it's 1994. They're sending faxes back and forth. They're physically mailing things. There's tremendous amount of phone calls, all to accomplish what are now pretty well prescribed steps in a process. So whether that's setting up a claim on behalf of an injured party, determining is there actually insurance coverage on this, for this person that I got in an accident with. Just because they gave me their insurance card doesn't mean they have insurance. It means they have a card that says they have insurance, but if they haven't paid their bills, they might not have that coverage. So there's those steps in the process of setting up a claim, getting coverage information, drafting a demand letter, actually sending it to an insurance carrier, getting it acknowledged, and then the actual negotiation and ultimate resolution. All of those things happen. They're very standard on, the majority of especially pre-suit claims or pre-suit cases. And that's where Precedent has stepped in as that neutral third party and going to the plaintiff firms and saying, hey, when you think I need to deal with an insurance carrier, what we really want you to think is I'm going to go to Precedent and they're going to deal with the insurance carrier for me. So I don't have to worry about, oh, well, State Farm does it one way and this smaller regional carrier that's only operates in Washington State does it another way. And, oh, I have this homeowner's liability issue versus this commercial trucking. I go to Precedent. They have really mapped out all of the different ways that the carriers want to consume information. And I just know that I can go to them, submit a request, and ultimately not even go to Precedent, but actually do it through the legal practice management system that I use at my firm. And to answer the second part of your question around AI, the majority of what we do in AI is related to the actual drafting of demands. So either directly through our platform or through your existing case management system, if you upload the supports that are necessary to create a demand, so that's going to be the police report, medical records, MRI results, that type of stuff, that goes into our platform. We have 18 different AI models that some are LLM, some are other variations of AI, but I think sort of most importantly, those various models accomplish the task of extracting all the medical details, creating a demand in a format that is both the plaintiff firm's template, but also highly consumable by that insurance carrier. And in addition to extracting the medicals, we just recently launched a feature to actually complete the narratives. But we also have a lot of optionality in our platform, meaning that some firms really want their attorneys or case managers to draft the narrative so they can create it from scratch. Others want to have a baseline and they can sort of be 80% of the way there, but then add their nuance, or we can draft that entire narrative. And then obviously they have the opportunity to validate and edit, as much as they like. There's also some really, I think, robust tools to do things that are maybe less exciting, but maybe given your background at Thomson Reuters, you would know the e-discovery space or need for redaction or the ability to sort the order of documents, but just really trying to create a lot of efficiency for the firms and for their case managers to make their job easier while also producing something that is ultimately highly consumable for the insurance carrier, because the volumes that those carriers deal with can be in the hundreds of thousands of injury claims every year. And at the adjuster level, some of those carriers have their adjusters carrying 150 or 200 claims that they're supposed to be working at any given time. And so everything that we can do to create efficiency for the law firm, but also make the consumption of that information easier for the carriers, speeds up ultimately getting to that first offer, getting that case resolved, and hopefully having a very happy client that leaves your office thinking this this attorney really advocated for me. I got to a result that I'm happy with a minimum disruption in my life, and I did it pretty quickly. So
Yeah, love it. So what I'm hearing is this is kind of like an additional step to a firm's case workflow, right? That really adds a whole bunch of efficiency towards kind of the end of the cycle. That would traditionally be very heavy kind of human input, having to do a lot of back and forth with various insurance providers or whatever to kind of get to the destination. So presumably, I think you kind of touched on this a little bit, but there's yes, there's benefit for the client and the firm, right? At the end of the day, because they benefit from the efficiency piece of this, and presumably you're getting good feedback from insurance carriers because this makes their life a lot more easier, right?
yeah, absolutely. I think having the standardization, moving this into a digital environment, and the carriers have invested, I mean, billions of dollars over the past, call it 10 or 15 years in their core systems. They're investing very heavily right now in technology, and they still get giant stacks of paper from plaintiff firms that is potentially not organized. They have to scan it into a system. And what we're doing is giving them something that's consumable. And, a different example of that efficiency that we create for the firm that to me really resonates is a lot of times a client comes to an attorney, they haven't even called their insurance carrier yet. The attorney says, "Hey, Bim, I, I'm here for you. We're a white glove firm. My staff's going to call the carrier and set this claim up for you." And that's obviously a great service for them to offer, but it's time consuming. Their folks are often sitting on hold, waiting to get through, and then spending time actually talking to typically a customer service representative from the insurance carrier to get that claim set up. Working through Precedent, especially if we are integrated into their case management system, it would be as simple as after intake, you've come to my office, I've signed you up, clicking a button that says set up claim. And as long as we know the insurance carrier, we can set that claim up. Obviously, it's better for us to have the police report, but doing those things again to make a very sort of rote or mundane task, not just make it more efficient, but essentially completely eliminate it from the desk of the case manager or administrative staff at the firm.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And you touched on this a little earlier, which is around neutrality and why that's important from a precedent perspective. Would you mind just like kind of digging into that a little bit? Because I think that's quite an important point.
Absolutely. Because for us to get the buy in from both parties, I can't go to a plaintiff firm and say, I'm going to get you a higher settlement. And I think, frankly, from what I've heard with others that say that, the data does not reflect that they're getting higher settlements by drafting more elaborate narratives, and other things like that. And on the other side of it, I would never go to an insurance carrier and say, hey, you're going to pay less. It's really about creating efficiency for both sides. And part of this is, there's a real talent drain. Less people are getting into these types of roles. So taking away the things that make your job not as fun, and having consistency in the process helps both parties kind of focus their valuable resources on higher value tasks. And for honestly, for both the firms and the carriers, those high value tasks can be simply calling the client to update them on their case, calling the claimant if, or the claimants that maybe don't have an attorney and working with those claimants. But, the concept that and the value that we're driving is to ultimately our customer is the injured party, and that neutrality helps us work with both parties in a way that, I think it would be really hard it's probably impossible for any single plaintiff firm to go to 500 different insurance carriers and say, hey, let's set up some standardized processes. And on the uh, same level for the insurance carriers, even though there's some with some tremendous scale, right? State Farm, Progressive, Geico, Allstate, all have at least, roughly 10% or more of personal auto market. It would still be hard for them. They don't have the resources to go to 100,000 different law firms and say, follow this process. So for us to come in and create that standardization helps both parties and creates more predictability and consistency in the way they interact.
Yeah, indeed. And I guess for law firms listening to this podcast and thinking about the technology investment that they're making over the next, 9 to 12 months, how do you quantify, like, what's the best way of thinking about precedent from an ROI perspective, right? Like a lot of firms come to us and they say, like, how do we build the business case for this? What would you say, like, if you were to summarize like some of the things that you've kind of touched on again earlier, how would you summarize the key ROI message for a platform like Precedent for a firm?
So typically our costs are associated as a case cost. And so it's something that doesn't necessarily need to be absorbed by the firm, which is, obviously valuable to them, but it also increases that client satisfaction by speeding up the process, being able to point them to an overall reduction in the time on desk. So if you're not spending as much time and these cases aren't taking as long to process, then it enables you to be freed up to focus on either growing your business, or maybe you have more involved cases, things that are going through litigation that are more time consuming. And, ultimately there is, of course, efficiency just purely on the cost of working through us versus what it takes a human, again, sitting on the phone or sitting typing at a keyboard, reading through medical documents, all of those things that they are valuable, but they're not as valuable as other things that resource or that firm could be doing. And we do it at a price point that really is attractive for firms and for their clients.
Yeah, fantastic. Well said. And from an ease of kind of getting started perspective, what does it typically take to get started on your platform?
So I could sign you up today if you were an attorney. Typically, is obviously some form of an agreement to, but we have a very flexible approach where we engage with firms. They have a period where they can essentially test our products in sort of a try before you buy or an opt out phase. And at the end of that phase, they can move into a longer term agreement that, of course, has a more attractive price points. Um, but it's essentially us getting that agreement executed and setting up the users is a matter of a few hours or less, really.
Hey John, how do I find out what we've invoiced my client?
How can I view my outstanding WIP?
How do I submit my expenses again?
Do we have next Monday off?
Monday off?
It's exciting to have fresh faces at your law firm, but onboarding them takes a lot of time and a lot of energy when everyone is remote. You're busy enough as it is. Helm 360 has the solution. Just ask Termi. Helm 360's next level chatbot solution for knowledge management. Termi can answer many of your new hires' questions for you without distracting you or anyone else at the firm. This means fewer frantic emails, fewer help desk tickets, more time and more focused productivity for everyone at the firm. Working with Termi, you can have those eager new employees up to speed in a snap. They may never need to ask you a question again. Check out helm360.com/Termi to see Termi in action and find out how it can make onboarding new hires as easy as sending an email.
That's fantastic. I think the time to value piece of any kind of product these days is so important, right? And I think the ability to be able to spin up fast, see the value of the money that you're spending is very important for firms. So that's really good to hear that it's a short runway to get and start to see value in the solution that you're investing in. So really, really good to hear. So just kind of like moving on a little bit to focus a little bit more on AI and the focus around AI. So I think you mentioned how you're leveraging AI within the platform to do some of that summarization and all of the other pieces of the puzzle that's there. From your perspective, the AI is like rife at the moment in the legal industry, right? There's lots of solutions that are popping up that do various things. How are you seeing it from your eyes in terms of how AI is impacting the future of legal work? And what is Precedent doing to kind of prepare law firms for that shift in the way that they work, right? Because part of this is a mindset change in terms of how we practice law. So it'd be interested to get your view on that.
Yeah, and Bim, I like that question a lot because there's a huge spectrum of appetite for AI. And what I mean by that is some of the firms are leaning in very heavily, and it's exciting, certainly as a provider of services or really technology solutions to law firms, that there is that appetite. But of course, you still have folks that are very skeptical. And that's part of the reason that we have that flexibility in, specifically with generating the demands to have essentially accountability checks or the ability to look at what we would call the authority. Where's this information coming from that's referenced, and doing that quickly to understand, okay, if this narrative says this happened at this cross street and these speeds were estimated for these vehicles, is that being made up by AI? Is it a hallucination? Or is there something that is referenceable? And that's what we do for the firms. But also, again, creating that flexibility where maybe a firm really likes our medical extraction capability, but they're just not quite there from a confidence perspective, or from a, just ready to let go, might be a different way to say it. And we give them that ability to say, okay, yeah, you know what? Here's the medical extraction. You can see everything. It's itemized. You can click to see what part of the bill it came from. But you still want your lawyers to, or paralegals or case managers, to draft that narrative. And so one thing that I really like about how we've constructed our products is to have that flexibility at the user level or the firm level to say, and we even have that with our approval workflows, right? So a firm could say, hey, case manager, we trust them. They draft something, it's ready to ship. Others could say, no matter who drafts it, there needs to be an approving attorney that does a thorough review. But creating that, sort of safety net, but also that flexibility, and sort of the way I would respond to the general sort of AI adoption is, and one of the reasons I'm very excited to now be sort of in both industries as far as legal and insurance, is that the legal market is embracing technology in a way that I don't think a lot of other sort of traditional service-based industries are. So, if I think about a doctor's office um, versus legal, the legal industry is, you go to the conferences, there's so many um, talks or presentations about AI and the many different ways that it can be used. So it's not just drafting demands, but it can be, um, virtual mediations with transcriptions happening, or depositions, transcriptions happening live in that process. It can be used to summarize a case for an attorney that, if they get a call and maybe they're not intimately familiar, they could have some tool to say, okay, give me two paragraphs on what's going on with this case so that I can have some frame of reference. Not that an attorney would be completely unfamiliar, but if you're really busy and it's a relatively new case, maybe you need that sort of little nudge to get you comfortable um, with that case. And the other thing that I have noticed, and I'm sure you have too, is a lot of as you read about AI, it feels like more than 50% of the things that the people that know, so to speak, are talking about is legal is an industry that has a tremendous amount of opportunity to benefit from AI because it's very document intensive. It has maybe lacked a lot of the technology investment until call it, maybe the last 8 or 10 years. You're obviously seeing more case management products in the market, but also a lot of new startups that are trying to drive an impact for the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I think it's interesting because it's almost like we've gone from, and I think there's still an aspect of fear, right? Like there is a little bit of fear in terms of what is it going to do to the way that we practice law and the value that's placed on the lawyer's skills, to actually there's a lot of benefit here, right? There's a lot of ways of being able to introduce efficiency and being more useful to the customer, and actually spending more time on, like you said, the high value stuff, right? And actually a good kind of follow on question is that what are you hearing from lawyers that you're interacting with? Like, do you feel like it's moving on from that stage of we understood, like we were scared in the beginning, but now we're kind of moving on to actually what use cases can we apply it to that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes from, I think it's called the hype cycle, right? People get really excited about it. There's a lot of investment, and there's a valley of fear, and certainly some of the missteps or attorneys citing case laws for cases that never happened because they were generated by AI. All of those things might have probably did definitely create a setback, but this is not an original thought by me, but just generally with AI is your job's not going to get taken by AI. It's going to be taken by somebody that knows how to use AI better than you do, because it is such a productivity booster. You can do so many things with AI that are both practical for work and sometimes just fun to make a funny image and show your kids, right? Stuff like that.
Yes, indeed, indeed. So tell us a little bit about the roadmap for precedent. So it sounds like a lot of the focus is around personal injury at the moment. Are there other legal areas that you guys are going to be looking at? Like what does the future hold for precedent?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll talk about couple different approaches to that. So certainly focus on personal injury right now and kind of starting at the beginning, right? So setting up claims, doing that, uh, coverage inquiry, determining in the states where it's required, what were the limits for this policy, getting a liability decision from the insurance carrier, um, drafting those demands, but eventually, and we've done some beta tests with this, getting into active sort of asynchronous negotiations through our platform where firm says, I would like this, carrier says, how about that? And so on and so forth until they get to a resolution or don't, right? Sometimes it's not possible to be done purely through a platform and they go to suit, and that's okay too. That's just sort of life in the legal market. Um, from a really kind of what practice areas we serve. So as you mentioned, personal injury, we are about ready to launch something in the workers' comp space. I guess the next area for us would be something around first party property. That's another underserved market. And then from there, it will really be sort of at the discretion of our customers or prospective customers. I would imagine we will probably go deeper on those use cases before we go broader into other areas. But you know potentially at some point, anytime there is an attorney representing an individual against another individual or a company, that there may be some application for one or all of Precedent's products.
Fantastic, exciting stuff. I love the negotiation piece, that would be really interesting to see. So yeah,
We
good
actually
to hear.
did a beta test on that, and it was extraordinarily interesting to see. And it also illuminated some of the gaps in the process today. And we've actually sort of proactively solved for that with our demands by ensuring that all of the medical bills are actually included, because there's some very simple things that happen in the process that end up delaying it. You have not all of the medical bills, or we've seen the completely wrong medical bills attached. And so alerting the firm to say, you're going to delay this a further 30 days if you submit this demand in this state. Go find the right bills and re-upload them, and we'll redraft this demand. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's excellent, excellent. Good to hear. Sounds like there's some exciting stuff coming down the pipe. So good to hear.
yeah, never a dull moment around here. We have an excellent team of both from our engineering team, our product team, and our data science team that I- are never wanting for work. There's always stuff for them to do. And fortunate, our CTO had started and sold the company to Amazon, and has been able to not only bring his expertise, but also bring over some of his former colleagues to, I feel like we've been fortunate to have a very talented group of engineers and data scientists and the product team.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. Excellent. So I just want to move to some wrap up questions, if I may. The first being, if you could borrow Doctor Who's time machine and go back to yourself at 18 years old, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh man. Um, by Amazon. Yeah, I don't live a life of a lot of regrets. I've been fortunate to have been given some opportunities, but fully taken advantage of them. And I think for anybody who's young, and life is long, and don't sweat the small stuff. And I would say that especially early in my career, not just at 18, but I would let stuff get to me. I would be sensitive about um, making a typo in an email, and that obviously made me very diligent about proofreading things, but also mm, learning to be able to sort of compartmentalize that and move on. And, um, I think at the end of the day, the best advice I ever got was from my dad, who said, just be yourself, and as long as you're working hard and being who you are, that, things are going to work out. And obviously having a career as an entrepreneur and leading go-to-market efforts, you need to be an eternal optimist, because I get told no many, many more times than I get told yes. But it's about stepping back into that next conversation and really being passionate about what you're doing, and knowing that you're driving value for your customers.
Absolutely. Resilience is key.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Especially as an entrepreneur, because everybody thinks your idea is not a good one until it works. And then those same people are telling you how brilliant you are. And neither of those things is true. I know that I'm not brilliant, but I also know that our ideas aren't that bad either.
Yeah, absolutely. No, those are wise words. Thank you for sharing that. So a little birdie tells me you're a bit of a guitar player. What's your go-to song in your spare time? What can you play?
What can I play? Well, my daughter loves the movie Cars. And so I learned Life is a Highway, boom,
Oh,
boom,
nice.
boom, boom. I did a lot of diligently took up guitar over COVID. And I actually have a friend who's a real musician who's trying to get me to sell him one of my guitars right now, but that's not going to happen. And other than that, it's just something I do to, if some people meditate, it might be something I do to just take my mind off of everything else. And there was certainly that time, probably like 6 months into COVID, where my wife was in the same room as me, and she says, it sounds like you're playing music now. And I was like, well, that's refreshing. But my real passion is, not to sound cheesy, but is my family, and really involved with my kids' school and their sports, and just, trying to embrace the time I have as a father, because I've heard this a few weeks ago, and not to bring the podcast down here, but 89 to 90% of the time you spend with your kids is before they turn 18. So I've got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, so trying to take advantage of that time now. And so I do a lot of Legos, play some Barbie. I am an excellent hide and seek finder, so I can do it all.
Fantastic. Yes, I also have a daughter who's 8 as well. Although she's anti Barbie, so she does everything apart from that. But yes, very fun time to be spending time at that age, especially. Very rewarding. And actually, I also dabbled with the guitar as well, but I've got only one go-to song that I can play, which is "Knocking on Heaven's Door" by Bob Dylan, just because the chords are
Nice.
easy. Thank you, Jim. Final question. What's the one question that I should have asked that I didn't ask today?
Um, that's a good question. And nothing jumps out at me, Bim. You did a great job covering this. Maybe where can they learn about Precedent? What conferences will we be at? I got to be shameless self-promoter here. So
Why
we're going to
not?
be at a tremendous amount of conferences throughout the rest of the year specifically. So we'll be at the LitiQuest Conference, Trial Lawyers University, ClioCon, Lardy Gras, Smart Advocate, Knack, Business of Law, Morgan Connect. And you can always email me, jim.andrews@precedent.com, and or visit our website at precedent.com. So, I never miss an opportunity to promote the business.
Fantastic. Well, you've done a great job of it. And by the way, great great name. I don't know how you managed to get precedent.com, but excellent name.
So as a side story, I wanted the company to be called Emergence, which is the concept of, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And my co-founder, our CEO, Grant, was very set on this name, and he purchased a domain. It was not cheap. And certainly I will admit that I was wrong, because it's, especially with attorneys, I don't have to explain the name. It sounds pretty cool. And the fact that, like you said, that we own that domain is pretty unique.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's good. It's good. Stand out from a brand perspective. So well done on that.
Thank you.
Jim, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been really insightful. And I'm sure our listeners will learn a lot from the conversation. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Bim. This was great. And maybe you and I can launch our own podcast, the Bim and Jim Show. I think it rolls right off the tongue.
I love it. Yes, we absolutely have to do that. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you so much. Take care.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Legal Helm. Thank you as always for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us out.